Okay.
All right. So as I was saying, it's you go overseas and you actually run into people that you trained up to actually go overseas, and that's one of those, whoa, no way experiences you get in the military. You meet someone once, you're like, I'm never going to meet him again, and then before you know it, you're like, weren't you there? And they're like, yeah, I remember you, and that's it's one of those things that goes on in the military.
I'm sorry, I'm just giggling because I like how you ran right straight into it, but I'm wearing a different shirt and everything. So you're trying to maintain the illusion. Yeah, I'm over here destroying it.
Okay. It's like this. I mean, you live in Florida, I live in New York, both fantasy lands, one for the
Yeah.
good, one for the bad.
Yeah, it was okay. So now I'm a little lost, but yeah, I was gonna recap a little bit and try to get back to where we were because we had talked about um your time at being, a failure at West Point. No, I'm just kidding. You, you chose to go a different route
Yeah.
and you went to college, ROTC, you were doing the ordnance training, all that. You met some coasties and you saw those same guys or this same person, I should say, when we were overseas or when you were training to go overseas.
So when I was with my original reserve unit doing a stateside mobilization, doing a mission training up soldiers, sailors, and airmen to go overseas to support operations there, I had run into a couple Coast Guardsmen. And I'm like, Coast Guardsmen, what are you guys doing in Iraq and Afghanistan? And they explained, oh, we inspect containers. I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Never thought a second thing about it. Now you fast forward to pretty much a calendar year ahead, and there I am in southern Iraq and meeting Coast Guardsmen that are doing the container mission. And I'm like, containers? And they explained the whole thing to me. And it was it was an education. And then it turned out their OIC in country was a lieutenant in the Coast Guard, which is equivalent to captain rank in the Army or Air Force in Marines. And that was their leader. And I'm like, no way, I trained him up. And they said, yeah, he does a lot of tours overseas.
Yeah, it is pretty wild how I mean, that's like a couple of people that I went to basic and AIT with. I've only met, a couple of them over the time, but I never thought I would never see any of them ever again. And I didn't end up seeing a couple of them here or there.
Yeah.
So, you're training people stateside with
Yes.
your ordnance unit. And what year is this time frame?
So this is mobilization started in December of 2010 and went through December of 2011. Then I
So you're
demo.
talking about your actual like deployment mode.
This is my MOB stateside, so it was ADSO orders. So that means you're getting active duty time and all that kind of accrual
Okay, I
for
got you
points for
now.
retirement and vacation. And then I came off of those orders, and I'm a 24, 25-year-old lieutenant, first lieutenant at this point, no deployment under my belt. And I'm walking around and I'm trying to train guys up that have had multiple deployments. And it's like, oh, I gotta do something. I can't be, one of these guys that always has stories about hearing things. I have to be someone that actually, I signed up for this. This is what I'm going to do. So I did what I thought I could do, and I called up HRC in Kentucky and I said, "Hey, I'm a lieutenant. This is my qualifications. This is where I am. Do you have any units going overseas?" And they said, "Wait a second." And I hear some paper shuffling in the background. They're like, "Actually, yes, we have a unit that we're pulling people for. We need lieutenants and captains to go to a deployment to Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan." I'm like, "Sign me up. Give me their UMO's name and information." So I called down to a unit out of Brockton, Massachusetts, which is just south of Boston. Spoke to a gentleman that had a very thick Bostonian accent, and he said, "Yeah, absolutely." Went in and did all my paperwork, uh, requesting to transfer from my unit in Syracuse to this unit in Massachusetts, and filled out the paperwork. Walked into my lieutenant colonel's office, my battalion, where I was currently at in Syracuse. Said, "Hey, sir, looking to get out of this unit, looking to get some deployment time." And I'm not going to mention names, but this individual, if I saw him with a flat tire in a rainstorm, I wouldn't stop to help him. Yeah, it is what it is. I mean, everyone has different personalities, and everyone sometimes they clash. But he was very, very casual with uh, ranks like E7 to E9, and then when it came to me in particular, And the other LTs, he was very, you know, hey, you stay in attention. You're my office lieutenant. It's like, all right, sir, the C6 was just chilling out with, sitting there and calling you by your first name. All right, sir, got it. I'll play the game. He goes, why don't you stand at attention and we talk to me? Like, all right, sir. Yeah, Lieutenant Gurdo, sir. Requesting transfer from this unit to another unit. He looks at the paper. He goes, ordnance. Huh. Real deployments happen in your civil affairs. I'll sign it. Good luck. And it was like,
Do you think
fuck this
maybe
dude.
that was a you weren't a part of his unit, so one of those kind of like you treat your sibling differently, yeah, but if someone else tries to treat them the same way, you can't, that's not okay kind of thing.
I don't know exactly. I know he was civil affairs. I know that he had done a couple civil affair deployments, not denigrating that branch of the Army. It's definitely needed. It's definitely a necessity to have. But he had, as far as leaders go, and anyone in the military knows, you have guys and gals that are definite, like people that can stand up in front of a crowd and control a whole room. They just walk
Mhm.
in, they have a command presence about them. This guy absolutely did not. He didn't. Like, he honestly didn't. If you were to talk to him, you're like, what rank are you? Like, if you were to see him in civvies, you're like,
Yeah,
you're
no,
Lieutenant Colonel?
I
Seriously?
understand.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's something interesting because I've had a lot of conversations with people who don't really get that.
Yeah.
So recently we were at my daughter did a pageant thing, right? And we're in the community center, and there's a lot of people in there. It's noisy. You can say what you want about the crowd being disrespectful and not trying to listen to the people on the microphone, but at the same time, I'm in the back sitting here going like, no one's listening to you because you're not commanding the room. Like you're getting loud, sure, but you are not, and not in a I'm better than you kind of way, but you are not showing your position of authority in a way that is capturing people's attention, that is keeping them focused and on point. So there is a little bit of like, yeah, sure, the crowd should be more respectful. You should get up there and also take control.
Absolutely. It's one of the things that people can sense weakness, people can sense fear. It's everyone says, oh no, like, I show respect to everybody. No, you don't. There's definitely a difference between uh, someone walking in a room that controls a room and someone who doesn't. It's We see it whether we're at a grocery store, we see it out in public, we see it like on TV with take your favorite football team or political event. You can tell who runs the show there,
Yeah.
and it's one of those things you can definitely see. And this individual was not a man that could control a room other than his not lackeys, but his group of people that would hang out with him that would try and run the show with him. But I digress. So, anyways, I transferred out to this unit in Boston. I met them on the phone, talked to them, and then they shot me a set of orders. And I'm like, okay, cool. And that had been when I was living in Syracuse. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to this unit in Boston. Went there, met him day one. And I remember I had driven my truck out there. And they're like, all right, guys, this is where we're going. We're going to Fort Dix, New Jersey for a train up for mobilization. I'm like, Fort Dix? Man, I was just down there 3 months ago. I'm like, hey, sir, I'm familiar with the post. I brought my POV. Can I drive it down there? Like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I had an absolute ball because not only was it the guys that I had recently left my unit training us, it was I knew everything on base. I knew all the cool stuff. I knew, okay, hey, we're only an hour from the Jersey Shore. Throw a dude in my truck. We just go hang out at the beach all day when we got nothing to do instead of hanging out in the barracks all day. And that was just like the in doc, like you go and you're getting your shots and you're hanging out and like hurry up to wait that all military people experiences. Like, okay, you got to be at the medical building 9 a.m. All right, we get the medical building 9 a.m. They don't open up till 10, but everyone's been waiting there since 8 because nobody wants to be late. And it's just one of those just time filler type of events. So from Fort Dix, we did our 1 month train up, then went up to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, which used to be an enormous base, but since the 90s it has closed down. It's basically the size of a city block is where they have cantonment. They still have all the training areas, and cantonment is where they have the gates and they have the fences and they have all the sensitive buildings. And since our unit was the unit that I'd play with was the 1173rd DDS B, they were out of Brockton, Mass, and their job was just container missions, port operations, and the ammo mission. And that is all something that is just strictly boats, loading things on, loading things off, just keeping sure the ports in Kuwait are working. And there is when I got to see what this unit actually did. And they just sat there in front of the TC Ames boxes, which are these primitive Excel spreadsheets with dimensions and weights for military equipment so they know what can be loaded on what and how to be transported in a nutshell. Am I right?
I mean, pretty fair assessment.
Yeah. And I'm not denigrating the troops that work on it. The program is definitely something that was sold to the military as being this great, wonderful thing. When if you just went to the civilian sector, saw how any favorite big box store used and shipped equipment and parts of things, it would be like, oh wow, this is so much more efficient. Why don't we use this? But it's the military, so
No,
if it's inefficient and expensive, they're going to use it.
I completely understand. We paid several $billion for it, so you're gonna use it.
You're going to use it. What do you mean? There's a cheaper program for $1 million? No, it's ridiculous. We can't use that.
What do you mean this tech was outdated the day we bought it? There's no way. Microsoft assured us.
Yeah, that's that'd be a discussion for a different day, and I'm sure someone's had a podcast just dedicated to the foibles of the military and trusting everything on Microsoft products.
Oh yeah, yeah. The big problem with the cloud strike or whatever going
Yeah,
on
that blue
there.
screen of death.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah.
but
Or like anytime anyone says like, "Oh yeah, this thing is mil spec or it's military grade," I'm like, "Don't buy it. Don't do it." Like we get the worst crap, man.
yeah, we get it for twice the cost and half the reliability. You get a box of batteries, brand new, still sealed in plastic. It's the year 2012. You're expired 2008. Whatever. Try it. It doesn't work. Oh, they all broke. Whatever. Throw them in the recycling bin. But from the 2 week train up at Fort Devens, we went down to this is when it's like, okay, no more POVs. Got to bring your cars back to wherever they are. Everyone needs to meet in Brockton, Massachusetts on this date and time. Met there, took some shuttles over to the airport, flew from Boston down to Hattiesburg, Mississippi to go to Camp Shelby, which is just down the road from Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And that's where you do the training of, running and gunning and night ranges and the final train up for going overseas. That's okay, well, everyone's locked down in cantonment. No one can leave. You're living in cinder block buildings with bunk beds and sheets put around your cot. So that way you can have a iota of privacy when you're talking to your significant other on your non-smartphones. Because this is 2011. So the iPhone had been out for a year or two.
Yeah.
So only a couple guys had the iPhones or the Android versions of it. And then from there went to Bangor, Maine, was the first layover. And then from Bangor, Maine to Shannon, Ireland down to Kuwait. And that's when you step off the plane, all kind of foggy because you've been in a plane for so long. You don't know what day of the week it is. You know what time it is. They open up the door and you step down off that runway, off the stairs leading the plane. You're like, where is there a fire coming? It is just that hot of an intensity that hits you. And it just surrounds your whole body. And you're like, is this a sandstorm or is this an everything? It's a total shock if you've never been overseas in the Mideast, especially. And it's where the whole coming to a deployment really began. It's like, okay, you're here. All right, well, I see people in PTs wearing PT belts for some reason, walking around. All right, well, let's get some chow. Get there, you get chow, and then where you're staying, where you're doing this, doing that, and it's just organizing. But I was the lone soldier from my unit selected to go up to Iraq for the end of the mission in Iraq, so to speak, that we know about. And I got to meet one of my E6s, Sergeant Pernell Anderson from North Florida, South Georgia. And I'm like, oh, all right, well, I guess I'm with you, buddy. He's like, yes, sir. Come on, grab your gear. I'll give you a hand. And that's when I hopped on a C-130 and flew into country. It was definitely an event.
So were you labeled like an IMA, individually mobilized augmentee, like we were, or?
No, I wasn't an IMA. I had orders for the whole battalion to go because I had transferred my battalion out of Syracuse to my battalion in Massachusetts, and I was on their logs. I was on
Okay,
their
so
book.
you
Like
were
I reported
fully
there
in the other unit on their
fully in.
deployment.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
No, I didn't get any individual orders to me because I probably would have not answered my AKO email and been like, oh, 2 months. Oh man, I probably should have checked this email before the MPs come get me.
Yeah,
But that's where the fun of Iraq began.
yeah.
That's where I
So
got to meet you for the first time, sitting there, and I walk in and everyone's got these cool shoulder holsters in this nice hardened building with AC and
it's
the
because they give you like we were saying the cheapest poopiest holster to hold your 9 mil and it's super uncomfortable. Or if you got a leg one, it's like we're working at a desk. You're banging into your armrests and stuff all the time. It's like,
yeah.
nah, man, I'm gonna get some of the cool leather ones, and oh, it tucks under my arm. It's not in the way, or I can hang it on the back of my chair.
Oh yeah, everyone would go to that. You land in country and you get to your post and you find your barracks and then you kind of meet everybody and then all of a sudden you're like, okay, well, work's done for the day. There's no mission going on. It's 5 o'clock. It's like, okay, what's there to do? Let's all go to the Haji Marts. And you
Yeah.
just go to the little Haji Marts and it's the same stuff every day. And you go there every single day to look at the same stuff because it's just not seeing ACU pattern or tan or sun bleached, whatever color you choose. It's, oh, okay. I'll look at a box of DVDs from the entire series of Frasier for $10. You never pay $10 exactly. That's when you go and you're like, I'll take this and then pack of cigarettes. I'll give you 8.50. No, 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 sir, no, sir, no, sir. That's too cheap. I give you $12 for everything. You haggle back and forth, and that's just the culture of being in the Arab world. And you get your stuff, and you go back to your chew, and you hang out, and you're like, all right, well, paid my $100 for my internet card because I got the fast internet this month instead of the slow internet this month. And you're able to log on and either Skype back home, but you're done at 5 a.m. and it's 3 a.m. American time. So you're like, okay, well, better wait till 4 a.m. my time to call home and it's 10 p.m. their time. So it was interesting.
Yeah, for sure. So when you come in, you're an
Yeah,
ordnance guy,
I
and
am.
we talked about this a little bit the other on the other part, and you tell everybody you're an ordnance guy. You don't know anything about uh, transportation, and you're sitting down there with a transportation. You like what did that feel like? And I know like the Army gave you a 2 week course or whatever, crash course on this is what you need to know. But what did that feel like being shipped to a totally different unit and having no idea what they do?
It was it was like, okay, this is my job. I got to figure this out as much as I can and mostly rely upon my NCOs and my soldiers to do their mission because they've been here longer than I have. And I told them, I'm like, hey guys, I know nothing about this. I'm going to trust you, rely upon you to figure it out, do your job, and we'll get through this. We'll get it done. And luckily, I had an NCOIC, Master Sergeant Keifer, that had his first taste of combat was in 71 to 72 in Vietnam.
I was say it was Vietnam.
It was Vietnam. Then he got out for a couple of years, and then he had already gone to Afghanistan, come back, had a heart attack, and now he was on his third war, as he said, and he was in Iraq. So I'm like, holy shit! I got a Vietnam vet for an NCOIC, and then I had Sergeant First Class or Staff Sergeant Anderson, and I'm like, oh man, this dude's a hillbilly. And he's the guy. And then Staff Sergeant DeValier, I'm like, this dude is my translator for any Hispanic guys I got to talk to because he speaks fluent Spanish. And then I had my cadre of E4s, part of the E4 mafia of Reddick. And then I had Thompson, and then I had Mayberry. And then I had a couple coaches attached. And thank God I lucked out and had an amazing crew of soldiers. I'd never been able to do anything. And I trusted, and you guys pulled through, and you guys carried me the whole way getting through the mission we had with inputting the data. Because you could have just been playing Snood or Angry Birds all day. And I'd be like, "Oh, looks good to me. Yeah, keep up the good work." And the mission would have fallen apart. And then I would have had to, if I got, God forbid, pulled out of country to come down to Kuwait to get yelled at to fly back up there, that would have been miserable. But no, it was only a couple of angry conference calls where the unit we were working on got hit. They lost equipment. They lost people. Everything had to be changed around. And when my colonel's asking for an update, I'm like, well, sir, their comms are down. They have nothing. We're still trying to figure it out. So for now, it is what it is. Apparently, that Yankee phrase of saying it is what it is angers colonels that are down in Kuwait. And I thought he was going to jump through the box. I didn't know it was the colonel at the time. I thought it was just a regular major or captain. I'm like, who is this effing guy? Like, I was trying to figure it out. Turns out it was the actual colonel. So I'm like, you know what? Fuck this guy. So everyone sends emails all day long. And so at the bottom of my email, it has the very respectfully Captain Lawrence Gurdo. And at the bottom, put in the translator, it is what it is. So I'm like, who here in this country knows Polish? So I put in there, it is what it is, in Polish in the bottom of my email. And then I put another inspirational quote like every idiot does in the military. And it was Sherlock Holmes / Star Trek Spock quote, put it on there. And so we'd end up figuring it out. The colonel ends up putting a lot more responsibility on me and just having confidence in my guys and myself to be able to go and get whatever it is done. Like you, Thompson, Mayberry, Anderson, Anderson and DeValier were able to come up with a process that was 6 months long, from first meeting with the UMO and getting the parts lit to going and boiling that down to being a 2-week operation. So it was something that increased efficiency, and it was in the military, and it wasn't done by an officer or a senior enlisted. It was done by you guys. You guys were able to say, hey, sir, why are we measuring all this stuff to send it down to Kuwait, to have them remeasure it, to give us the results back so we can send it to the unit that originally measured it? Just take it straight from them. We'll put it here. We'll give it to the shipper so that way they know what to do. And it's like, absolutely, we'll do that. And that's what we did. And that's what was successful. And that shows time and time again, the most important things and the best improvements in military aren't done at brass level and above. It's all done at sergeant level down. Just you guys on the ground doing your work and being like, oh, why are we doing it this way? This makes no sense. Let's just do it this way. And it's, as long as you bring it up in a coherent way and show that it works, it's like, okay, yeah, I'll support you 100%.
But that's one thing that I really, if I had continued and if I had become a general, I think I would really work on is the relationship between the OI, the officer, commissioned officers and the non-commissioned, and getting that a better bridge. Like in my opinion, I almost feel like you should even have to be enlisted before you can go commission, and I know that would never happen in today's world. Just so you could have a better understanding of the other person's side. Like in your case, you didn't necessarily need to know how to do our job, but from the other side, from my perspective, we were all very appreciative that you took that approach of, because most other officers would have come in and said, listen, this is the way things are done, and this is the way you're going to do it, and you're not going to argue with me about it. And then we would all butt heads because it wouldn't have worked.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that ability to come together and say, like, I understand this is my half of it, this is your half of it. I don't know how your half works. So let's come together and make something work. And in my experience, that usually the officers that I know that were enlisted first were typically ones who were more on board with having that kind of relationship. I remember specifically when I met you and I asked you what kind of officer you were, if you were like ROTC from high school or college, you direct commission in, and you were like, oh, I was direct commission. I went right ROTC in college straight into officership. And I was like, oh, you're the worst type of officer. You have no
Oh,
idea, no experience.
I was lucky enough to be able to have a couple servings of humble pie before I was able, given the privilege to lead troops. It was I, had worked. I've worked in a farm since I was 12 until I got to high school and college. I worked at a grocery store. I understood what it was like to be at the bottom, whether it's shoveling out pig pens or throwing hay bales all day or cleaning up toilets, or I understood what it was like. And after college, I had been like, well, do I pay rent or do I, do this? It's like, well, I have $100 to my name, so let me fill the car with gas and figure it out after that. I I never had that privilege of being able to say, hey, mommy, daddy, I need this today. Can you give me XYZ? No, that shit. I never had that. And I think if you've been kicked in the head a couple times and you get back up and you're like, okay, well, this is how the real world is. This is how things need to be done. That people around you can see that, they can sense that. They can be like, oh, okay, this he's not crazy. He's like, okay. Before I was able to go on deployments, I worked at an auto parts store. Like that's what I did. Like I had a college degree in criminal justice, aka retail sales, and that was something that it's like, okay, well, I have a useless degree. I owe my life to the military because I signed up for it. I might as well try and make a better life for it, and just understand. Okay, well, no, I got a store manager that's a real bag of dicks, and I got a store manager that's really good. So you can figure things out.
Yeah. Well, I would say that the whole team together, we were all very fortunate. I mean, I've expressed many times how fortunate I feel to have the group that we did,
Yeah.
because it certainly made it a lot easier to do everything. Um,
Oh yeah.
and I remember times of you and I staying late a couple of nights, and you're like, "Hey, man, show me what you do." Like,
Yeah.
not necessarily teach you how to do it, but so I have a familiarity with what it is you actually do, and went through some plans and kind of
Yeah.
showed you the process a little bit. And I was super appreciative of that because that was another one where it's like, say, most people just they would have been like, "All right, day's over. I'm not going to put in extra work to learn anything about these guys," you know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I tried to figure out wherever because it's one of those things. It's like you're a firefighter. You're trained to be a firefighter, so that's definitely something that, God forbid, Keifer has a heart attack. Like I'm not good on CPR. I know if you had been trained to be a firefighter, you could have done a CPR thing.
Yeah.
Or if someone, it's you got to know your guys. You got to know who you got, what not to exploit, but just to use them to their best of their abilities. Like if Thompson had been like a professional athlete instead of just planking on all the equipment he could and getting pictures of it because that was popular in the day. He could have been one to jump on top of the containers, put the RFID tag. He could have done something like that. But it was, I think we all hit our full stride when we moved from Basra up to Adder and could see the ziggurat of Ur out through our windows, and we're able to confiscate and use those shoes right up by the runway with our own bathrooms. Dude, those are the bee's knees. You had an elevated walkway and your own air conditioner unit and your own bathroom and shower. It's like, man, this is phenomenal. I don't have to put on shower shoes and my weapon and my PT gear just to go take it all off, take a shower, then come back. At
That
first,
that was the life.
that was the life. And then just, what was it? We would start to get in just silly arguments over whatever. And then I remember the first time Kiefer pulled his gun out, and I'm like, this could go one of two ways. It can either go, I'm gonna be in a lot of trouble, or they can just calm things out. And then DeValier pulls his gun out, and he'd be like, "Listen here, Mexican." And DeValier's like, "You shut up, hillbilly." And it was like an awkward version of like I Love Lucy, but with real guns. And then we just started doing a tally on the board between the number of gunfights, knife fights, and tool fights that we would have from like throwing them at each other's desks, and then just to let off steam. I mean, you're in a situation where you're getting rocketed and the C-rams are going off and mortared, and it's just a pain in the ass. So you just got to try and figure out how to relax every once in a while. And
It's so funny because Dan and I agreed. He said like we could probably write a book, and I'm like, I think we could come up with a sitcom just from our year because I know like because other people weren't doing the dumb stuff we were doing. Everybody got so mad at us all the time. Like when you changed your ringtone to Leroy Jenkins from World of Warcraft.
and you're getting 20 phone calls a day, and then it's just constantly going off.
That
And
dude from the other side of the office, will you please turn that fucking thing off?
yeah, that was good. Or just the little stuff. It's rainy season in Iraq. So what do? You order shit off of Amazon, you have it delivered to your APO, and whoever got those little helicopters, I don't know if it was Butters, I don't know if it was you, but we would stick the message in the landing gear with a post-it, and you had to try and land it on someone else's desk. Like it's stupid shit you're going to remember forever. You're not going to remember the number of pieces of equipment. You're going to remember the first building we were in when we got to Toledo, and it had uneven stairs. It was a staircase going up in one of the only buildings still standing from the British occupation. And the treads weren't the same height. One would be 6 inches, another would be 3, another one would be foot. You're like, who's designed these things? Like you're going to fall and break your neck. And then from the coasties coming up, like, hey, sir, I got my team of 4 guys, whether it was Demorid or it was Jesse Snyder or it was Thunder Dan Merrick. And they're like, I'm going to need a vehicle. I'm like, look, guys, We got my van, we got the van, we got the Suburban we stole from whoever it was. And I'm like, you guys, you're on your own. We're like, all right, sir, we got it. I'm like, look, I don't care what you do. I just don't want to do a sworn statement on it. Okay. Don't fuck with people's food. And I don't want a sworn statement. They're like, anything? I'm like, yeah, do what you got to do. They're like, all right, sir, we got it. They became pirates. Like their job was to hunt pirates in the real world. And now they legit became pirates. You show up the next day, they have a pickup truck filled with fire extinguishers and monitors for computers. They're like, look what we found. It's like, all right, bro, good job, man. I'm like, you guys need a fuel card or anything like that? Like, no, no, we got it, sir. It's like, all right, you just keep doing what you got to do. And, we'll go from there. And that was a fun time. So, like, I mean, just, you got to let a little bit of anarchy reign. Because if you don't, then you keep it like, if you had one of those hard ass like sergeant majors there, you will show up on time with your uniform. Fuck that shit. That's how you get people angry. That's how you get people not wanting to work.
Like the dude who I left the latrine after we moved Choose, where we had the shared bathrooms, and my shirt wasn't
Yeah.
untucked. So this guy comes out shirtless with shaving cream all over his face, yelling at me about my shirt not being tucked in. I'm like, bro, you're out here half naked yelling at me. What are you doing? And he's like, what unit are you with? And it was like, suck it. I'm not telling you jack, like, and just walk
Yeah.
away. Because what were they gonna do to us? This tiny little nobodies, not even a part of the infantry unit that owned the base. Like,
Yeah. We weren't part of 20th Engineers. We weren't part of the, 25 ID landowners. We weren't 3-1 Gray Wolf. We weren't the cav unit in charge of security or the base owners or the landowners. We were just this little unit that everyone's like, yeah, fuck you, whatever. But it's like, all right, man, if you want to put everything in a 5-ton and move it out, you can do that. Or, you could just let us be our own little entity, not bother us, and we'll just get all your shit home.
it made stuff really nice. I mean, like I say, a lot of people got real mad at us for the stuff we did. That general was very upset when he found out we had wet shoes. Uh,
Yeah. Was it the 1-star or was it the 3-star?
it was. I want to say it was because who was the
The
it,
little 1-star dude who was my height, he was chill. Like you would
yeah.
just see him walking around, no PT belt on, because you're in a combat theater. Why the fuck do you need a PT belt to walk to the bathroom or to walk to get food at nighttime? I mean,
Yeah, in a war
it,
zone to make yourself more visible for,
yeah,
bombs and bullets and stuff. I want to say it was his boss was coming to visit, and
yeah,
they were like, why are there people in these wet shoes that are supposed to be for when like high profile people come to our base?
yeah,
And so we got kicked out of them.
yeah. And then we got kicked out. We moved down, and I mean, you guys made the best of a bad situation. You made a movie theater, and I'll never forget that. Coming back, me and Devalia came back after a late day, and we're walking back in, and you're hanging out at the Coasties Chew, where it was the duplex one, and you had commandeered some pallets and a projector. And Thompson at this point had never seen Star Wars, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And
That's
you're
why
you're
one
here
reason why I
telling
wore the
me,
shirt because I
yeah,
was hoping we would get to the end. Rest in peace to James Earl Jones, of course.
yeah, I know. We've got golden voice and bright green eyes,
Yeah.
and yeah, but Thompson had never seen it, and you guys are sitting there watching. I'm like, all right, well, I've been working all day. I'm gonna go to bed. Have fun, guys. And you guys went and you had your little movie theater popcorn, and it was amazing. It was great for you guys to do that stuff.
That's the thing that and people don't believe me when I tell them stories and stuff like being in the office. Like, yeah, man, like we did because you hear fantastic things of people being in the infantry and rangers and stuff. And of course those stories deserve to be told. But it's like, man, there is a whole other side to things that go on over there that you guys just have no idea. You've never been sitting there trying to work with this he had to have been late 60s, early 70s at that point. Vietnam veteran crawling underneath your desk with his pistol out and his helmet on, saying Charlie's in the trees and shit.
Yeah, when people talk about like Vietnam guys, are like, oh, talking about Charlie. This dude legit saw Charlie, and he's wigging out. And granted, we're not, he's not in a turret of an up armored Humvee or an MRAP, but he's still dice. You don't know which one's going to land on. So if you get hit with, a missile or a rocket or a fucking mortar, and it lands where you're staying, I mean, that's it. But he would trip out, and it would be like, oh, okay, what's going on with you people? What's going on with you guys? Like Vietnam vet. They're like, oh, Good job, buddy. And he just goes back to work and he gets back and you're like, huh, you doing all right? Yeah, I'm doing all right, sir. All right, cool, whatever. And you just go back, you pretend like nothing happens. And like, yeah, we were the admin bitches and container movers and everything like that. But I mean, it was a legit job. It had to be done. And I mean, we made the best of it. I mean, you definitely, you make the fun times. Like, just cruising around and in Keifer, the Vietnam vet wasn't above playing fun games like hanging out in a vehicle and it's got the backup sensors on it. So he backs it into a T-wall and then slams the door open into the general's SUV that's right next to him. And then we just, of course, move 4 spots down. So that way the little E3 that's in charge of driving the general is like, oh my God, someone hit his fob runner. The Suburban that's going to dent the door. He's going to be so upset. It's like, bro, your general doesn't know what's going on. He's just hanging out here, just handing out FEP stickers. So when we sell everything to the Iraqis for $1, it is what it is. But, I mean, there were good times and then it started to suck a little bit. Like, I remember being told by other guys that had been deployed before I deployed that, oh yeah, Iraq, they got a KFC, they got a Burger King, they got McDonald's food trucks, all these gut trucks. And you get there and you see it's like the last day of the state fair. I love to describe it that way, that you go up and you show up and everything's broken. The people that are left there are angry, they're dusty, they're dirty, they're toothless. And you're like, fuck. All right, well, let's just have fun. And then the PX where you can buy like things you might need, like toilet paper or shoelaces, it boils down to being, I don't know, a decently sized building to being the size of a travel trailer.
They
You're like,
moved
okay,
it
well,
entirely.
yeah,
They shut down the hard building and put it into like
a little trailer, yeah,
like a school portable thing.
yeah. And then you go in there, you're like, okay, they got coffee from Germany, they got tampons, which I mean, obviously those are needed, and they got shoelaces. All right, but they're Air Force blue shoelaces. So when you break them in your boots, you're like, well, you got the bad shoelaces, man. But yeah, and then the internet goes away, and then the Chow House shut down. And I remember, I don't want to say who it is. Oh no, statute of limitations. And we're in a different continent. Yeah, some of my guys stole the nice bright blue packaged MREs that were specifically designed and saved, reserved for the general. And all of a sudden, they just show up in my office, and it's like, okay, cool, bring back your shoes. Don't let anybody see that shit. So as everyone else is having veggie omelets for meals, we're like, wow, this is a real chicken breast, and then truly enjoying food. I mean, a war without thievery is not a real war. So you
It's
got to be able to do something like that.
what's that quote? It's like there's only one thief in the army. Everybody else is trying to get their stuff back.
Yeah, it's very true.
So we as you said, we were in Basra and
Yep.
we moved over to Adder. Within that time, we're moving units. Basically, our job was to facilitate the process of people heading back home.
Yep.
So we would help them to do their plans and get stuff, launch ships, and then all that jazz. Did you? I don't remember if you ever, because I know you came out to some of the pickup missions with us occasionally, but you never had to go on like an off-site pickup on one of the little fobs, did you?
No, unfortunately I wasn't able to hop in a helicopter and go in any offsite pickups. But every mission that came out of the post we were on, I was out there. If you
Okay.
guys were out there, I was out there with you.
Yeah.
And I got it nixed from higher up of me being able to hop on a bird to go with you guys. So they said, well, you need to be there, command and control, sir. It's like, well, no, I'm going to be with my guys. They're like, no, Lieutenant, you're going to sit there and you're going to, we need to know what's going on. So you need to be in communications with them. And it was one of those, all right, sir, I got you.
Yeah.
And it's,
That's what Sergeant Duvalier is for. He goes with them
yeah.
to the fob, which those always sucked.
Yeah, you guys go in a new fob, you're in a transient housing, you're living out of a sleeping bag, you're counting pieces, you're making sure the Iraqi truck drivers show up on time with their little T-boys in the front seat next to them. And it's
Yeah, it was always an interesting experience. Like I was telling Dan, like the one time we had a 12-year-old kid in the middle of our yard who would drive in a truck, and he had paperwork. Like, all right then, 12-year-old kids driving the truck today.
yeah, they're pull starting those trucks, these big Mercedes that must have 2 million miles on them with tow chains to get them going, and then they hop on the highway They're doing 120 miles an hour down MSR Tampa all the way to the port.
What do we call them? The jingle trucks, right?
Jingle trucks. Yeah.
Because they had all the decorations and
Yep.
they were
Everything that was silver was painted gold. And they had all the jingly shit hanging from the windshield. And they didn't have the bells like in Afghanistan. And these trucks are actually made of metal, not wood. But it was it was interesting. Remember seeing you just go in the holding yard and it's just a sea of trucks and all these dudes just taking shits on the ground. You're like, oh, man, I gotta be careful what I step in.
the respectable ones would go behind something.
Yeah, the
and,
other one
and
would just be like, whatever.
they would hike their man dress up and do their
Yep.
business and then throw sand in their butt crack and just move on with the day.
It was interesting to say the least.
Uh,
But no, I have to say it was pretty amazing to be able to fly into fly into combat in a C-130, get out, and then when we were leaving that day, we had packed up all when the day we left. I remember, like, what was it, 2 or 3 days before, we loaded all of our own equipment in our own container and like having to, it's like mailing your shit home, and it was so weird. Like you put everything in there, like, oh, that was my life in the box. Put in a box, throw the all the stickers and everything we had to do on top of it. And then that got shipped down to Kuwait ahead of us. And then we're like, okay, we're living out of a duffel bag. And he loaded up our duffel bags and we hopped on a Chinook and flew out of country. That was definitely a unique experience.
for sure.
You know, he's sitting there looking out the window and just you're looking out the back door with the hydraulic fluid leaking from the ceiling, because that way you know there's hydraulic fluid in there. And seeing the gunner hanging out the back, dipping, and fly to Kuwait, where we got picked up by our unit in Kuwait, which was amazing. I mean, that was Chief Allison that coordinated for us to get picked up at Buehring. Because if he hadn't thought ahead of time, like, hey, who's picking up our guys? We would have just had to figure out, right, have to hop on that transport in the morning and then go all the way down and try and figure everything out. But he was our counterpart that would relay to the rest of the troops down in Kuwait for every mission what was going around. And from there, it was, okay, he made sure we got picked up. All of our gear was picked up, had housing we got there. So that way, when we landed, we were able to take a couple of days off and then roll into work the next day or when it was our time.
So for us, I remember as things were dwindling down, because if I remember, it was December 18th was our last day in Iraq.
Mhm.
Was that 2011, right?
Yeah,
I'm,
2011.
I'm terrible with dates and things. Um, but for us, things were becoming increasingly more difficult with the bathrooms being shut off, and then, um, like you say, the food, and we had nothing to do because everything was closing. From your perspective, as you're our leadership there, and you obviously have no control of what happens on the base, how did that feel for you being in your particular spot when all that was going on?
It was one of those things. It's like, okay, this is the end. This is what, you know, just the basics. Just make sure you guys are fed, clothed, shelter, and that we have comms back home in case something happens. Like, we didn't have internet. We had the zipper line we could call back down, the secret phone line. We can call back down to Kuwait to give them updates when we got hit, who was hit, who wasn't hit, blah, blah, blah. And I remember I had hoarded away a couple bags of coffee, and my family and friends had been sending me hostess care packages and treats. So we were able to, like when shit was getting miserable, it's like, all right, guys, look what we got. We got gum, we got hostess treats, we got coffee. So when everyone else was just sucking back on Taster's Choice, we're like, we got fresh brewed coffee. Like, we got to enjoy the little things in life. And it was always just the little things that made it a miserable situation much more fun. Like, I remember I had a scented candle in my office, and everyone would, when they came in, they'd be angry, they'd be miserable, and they just walk in, they're like, this is vanilla. It smells wonderful in here, and sit down. And it's just like, it's like an interrogation tactic. You go in and someone's sad, and then you give them something that smells nice. They're like, oh, what were we talking? What was I mad? I'm not mad. I'm just trying to figure this out. It's like, okay, yeah, we'll work with it. This is my specialist. There's my sergeant. Like, we'll be able to figure it out. We got this. So
The soothing lavenders. It's really
it was
nice.
vanilla lime, I think it was. Yeah. But no, it's just it was all those the little things are the most fun.
Well, that's another thing that brings to mind was I really appreciate how you were willing to push back even against other people who outranked you. I remember one that was burned into my mind specifically. We had one unit, it was a major, I think, was given a lot of problems, and we because we would tell them all specifically, like, listen, what the paperwork says is what happens. So, like, if your name is on the paperwork, you have to show up and sign for it, or it doesn't move because you're the one responsible and a major was giving us issues about having to come down. And I remember you sitting on the phone and just telling him over and over, like, yes, sir, is exactly what the specialist told you, sir. No, what the E4 said, it's exactly what he told you. And I'm like snickering in the corner. This at you very tactfully telling this guy to go fuck himself.
That's a delicate art, and it's something fun to be able to perfect. How to tell someone nicely they're a fucking idiot and they don't know what they're doing because it has to be done this way. And it's like, well, I mean, if you don't want your stuff to move, I mean, we can put you to the bottom of the line. You're gonna have to hang out longer, and you have to explain why it all got screwed up and the move's not going to. Because I know I'm not going to get in trouble for it, and I know my guys. We're doing everything to the letter of the T. This is the way it's got to go. And I mean, my colonel backed me up on this, and was a little general in our chain. So it's one of those things, sir. Oh, fine, whatever. And it's like, all right, yeah, have fun, buddy.
So we're moving out of country. We're getting back to Kuwait, and then we all get broke apart for whatever grand plan that they had. And I honestly don't remember much about what they had you doing at that point.
So I remember I got back down to Kuwait, and the colonel of our battalion is like, well, sir, well, Lieutenant, you did a great job. We're all done. He goes, but we need to figure out a mission to keep our guys employed so they don't break them all up. So I remember we had to keep running missions in Kuwait, which boiled down to moving 3 to 15K generators from Kuwaiti Naval Base up to the S Pod, which is the commercial port in Kuwait, which is, I think it's got a 10-mile drive. But it was just trying to, get the Kuwaiti police to come on to escort us because you're not in the combat zone. So it was just trying to find busy work, just trying to, so this colonel could limp his rest of his time in country there and then give a transition to the new colonel that was coming over. So that way he still had a mission, and it was just basically find work to do. It's like, okay, so, talking to whatever entity was there in country, be like, hey, who's doing this, who's doing that, just trying to figure out little shit. And it's like, okay, well, we'll do this, we'll do that for you. And I mean, the office setting definitely changed. It wasn't, we as soon as you land in Kuwait, you got to check your rifles and you got to check your pistols in at the armory. You could check them out anytime you want. You just got to check them in. So it's weird. You go from having a gun with you everywhere you go to having it nowhere. You're like, oh, okay, shit. And then you're just hopping in it, and only the military used this Mitsubishi multi-person van that could hold 20 people. So we didn't want to advertise that we were Americans. So you had a white dude with a buzz cut wearing a tan t-shirt and 30 other white dudes with buzz cuts with tan t-shirts on in the back seat going to the port and going over the barriers to get in. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that's OPSEC. Yeah, real good.
But take your camo jacket off because that's what makes
Yeah,
you stick out.
that'll make you stick out, not a bunch of white dudes. But it was definitely a different environment, but it was like I'm happy we held on to a little bit of shenanigans afterwards. Whether it was, you guys rearranging my desk to make a full blown battle scene with little army men, or
We did it
taking
on top of your picture of the clown in the iron lung,
yes,
the
that was my
sad
favorite.
crying clown.
That's my motivation for the day. It was before the days of live laugh toaster bath. It was a sad crying clown in an iron lung, and that made me laugh so hard looking at that because it's a clown trying to be happy, but he can't be happy because he's in an iron lung.
We made a photocopy of it and cut it into pieces and put it across your desk with the army men
Yeah,
on top of it. We even had little red splotches of paper to be like someone was down laying in a pool of blood and stuff.
yeah.
I remember
And
you walk up to the desk just looking at it like, no.
whether it was that or going over to my major's desk and just little things to make him laugh. Well, not make him laugh, but make me laugh at his expense. Is I rearranged. He was a hunter pecker on the keyboard, so rather than put in the normal proper typing position, he would seek out each letter individually. So I'm like,
The
hey,
two fingers, tick, 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 tick.
yeah, the period and the comma are right next to each other. I bet you he'll never notice if I rearrange those two keys. So I just popped him off the keyboard, put him back in the wrong spot, and he was typing on an email, banging away, and you hear the backspace button go back, and he starts typing again, and he yells from across the office at me, and I'm like, "Oh, sir, what happened? What could possibly be the problem?" He's like, "I know you did this, fix it." I'm like, "All right." So I fixed it for him, and just little shenanigans, little games like that to make the day happy.
We used to change. I remember I changed the setting on your mouse to where you would hit the scroll wheel in the middle, but it would send you straight to the bottom of the page or straight to
Yeah,
the top of the page.
I appreciated that. Or screwing the monitor and putting it upside down. Just all
Or
these little, yeah,
the scroll speed for the arrow itself. We did that to Tim one time where we turned it all the way down, so he's having to move the mouse like 1,000 times to make it move an inch across the screen.
yeah. I mean, that's the lighter side of doing military jobs. Just finding fun things to do with boredom. Instead of like lighting things on fire and blowing things up, we just got to do goofy office pranks they would do in the office. Just enjoying things, having fun.
Yeah, we were fortunate a couple of times, like when we got taken out to get to see some ordnance get blown up. I think
Yeah,
a
that
lot of
was good.
that we still have to be very tactful with how we say it, but that was cool.
Yeah, some guys that jobs were to dispose of that said ordinance. They like, hey, let's go over here. And they were the ones in charge of clearing out the amnesty boxes that filled up with everything from marital aids to grenades that fucking some dude put electrical tape around because he saw Rambo do it once and just stuffed it in an amnesty box in Kuwait or in Iraq in 120-degree weather.
They had a pallet full of mortars that were on there as well,
Yeah.
and they put so much C4 on there. Like, I'm not. They're the one. They're the professionals, but I'm sitting there loading the C4, and they just keep slapping bricks on top of this thing, just more and more. I'm like, is this like, are should we be worried?
Well, another example of the military, if it's inefficient, let's do it. Like up until, what was it, 15 years ago, it was more efficient to shoot all the ammunition you requested than it was to put it back in. So if you used one round out of a case of 1,000, you had to burn through that 1,000 rounds because the ASP wouldn't take it back. You're like, oh, all right,
Or the
whatever.
paperwork they could, but it was such a pain in the butt to make happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
But no, then
So
after that, all you guys started to leave me. People go home onesies and twosies. And then at the end, it's like, all right, well, the last one here, all my friends are gone.
so where did you go after that?
So after Kuwait, I ended up going back to Syracuse. And then from there, I went into nursing school.
Okay. So
Yeah.
at this point you're back home,
Yep.
your active duty time is up, and you have a little break from the reserves because they give you a few months to
Mhm.
decompress or whatever. And then you're going to nursing school now, which is awesome, I think. I mean, I guess that didn't end up becoming the direction you headed.
No, that wasn't where destiny took me. So I ended up going back to nursing school and talk about a culture shock, going from being in country to being to Kuwait, then going and being around a bunch of 17 to 18-year-old girls in nursing school. So by this time I had been deployed, divorced, and now I was in school surrounded by all these people that thinks the biggest issue of the day is, oh my God, Tristan didn't hit me back on Snapchat. It's like, what the fuck is going on here? Like you guys have no idea about the real world. So it was interesting in nursing school. I loved it. I learned a lot. And while I was there, I ended up I'm getting a random letter from the New York State Police asking me to come do a PT test with them. And I thought to myself, I'm like, PT to New York State Police? I'm like, I took that test in 2008. So this is 2012. And I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm sure. I guess I'll show up. And went there and just kept passing everything from the PT test to the psych exam to the background investigation. And I was still in nursing school at this time. So I'm still going to school. My weekends, I'm going here and there and doing whatever. But I was given the opportunity to show up and see if I could make the 6 month academy and survive that. And after I survived that, I've just been doing that ever since.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
You you brought up, if I may, you brought up your
Yeah.
divorce for a second. Do you mind if I ask a couple of
Yeah.
things
Do what
about
you got to
that?
do. It's all public
So,
knowledge.
well, for a lot of people, I mean, you hear about divorce rates in the military and firefighting
Yeah.
and police, and they're very high. And there are obviously a myriad of theories as to why they end. And for probably the majority of people is just the idea, and it's not just being separated, but it's, there's a lot of spouses that can't handle like, hey, when the army calls, I have to go. I don't have a choice. I can't put you first.
Yeah.
And vice versa. There are other people who are in the army that can't figure out that they have to, they try, but they don't do a very good job of trying to make things work, or are not the most gracious in the ways that they um, in their dealings with their spouse about how all that works. Uh, do you mind me asking, like, what was it with your relationship? Was it similar to that? Did you experience that? Was it a big part of it being in the army? Was it difficult for you guys?
I can only speak on my half. I don't know what's in my other half, my my ex's mindset, what went on with that.
That's fair.
But I think it was so from my half being a military person, it was like everyone always wanted like, oh, I'm gonna do this, that, and the other thing. It'll be cool. It'll be like, oh, my wife's at home, care packages, all that fun stuff. The Hollywood version of it.
Hmm.
And I mean, Hollywood and reality are two totally separate animals. And that was one of the things. And as far as the stats with people being divorced in the military, it absolutely is very high, as well as law enforcement. And it's one of those, it's a high stress job, whether it's, whether you do whatever in the military, there are stressful times. Like, how many other real life careers are there where you're like, oh, hey, honey, I got to go to the field for 3 months. Oh, I got to go here for training for a week. I got to go here. I got to go there. And it's that chaos that you can't really plan a normal life around it. You have to let the military dictate your life. And some people can't deal with that part of not being in control of their life. And some people just can't deal with the portion of being alone for long stretches. Like
Yeah.
for us in the military, it's work. So you work, you go there, you make friends easy, you hang out with people, you have a great time with someone. They know everything about your life and your life story and your family and your friends, and then you'll never see them again. You meet them, you bond really close, you bond really tight, and then they're gone. And it's a different type of person that's able to live that lifestyle, to be able to say, drop me here in a room full of random people, I'll make friends, I'll have fun, and when the day's done, I'll come home and then I'll just try and roll back into regular life how it was before I left. And some people can't do that. Some people aren't capable of saying, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to continue on with what I'm doing and just hold whatever sanctity of a relationship or any uh, hope of relationship with the person I left or left me. And, things happen and that's the way it is.
Yeah, for sure. I was pretty fortunate with my wife. I'm still with the same woman here. Now we are almost married for 10 years. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, next year will be 10 years.
Yeah.
We were dating at the time, and when I was getting deployed, I was like, I don't know if I was more realistic or pragmatic because I was only 21 when we got deployed. But I told her, I was just like, listen, like if you don't think you can handle me being gone for a, year longer, maybe whatever, like I get it. Like I'd rather you admit that now and we don't go through a whole crazy back and forth and trying to make it work and all that kind of stuff. And I gave her an out before we deployed, and she didn't want to take it. And we stuck together. We're still together to this day. Um,
Yeah.
So I think a lot of it is like you say, it takes a certain type of person because she's a firefighter as well. So like we live that life where she's gone for stretches at a time and stuff, even on her side. So it's which two army people getting married doesn't necessarily guarantee success
Oh
either.
no, it doesn't. I mean, it's
But it's if you have people who can
lifestyle.
sit
Yeah,
down and have that understanding amongst each other of the
yeah.
reality of the situation.
I have plenty of my classmates that I graduated with out of college, and they are, the best of my knowledge, all of them are still married. None of them have been divorced. So
Yeah,
it's.
you're the
I mean,
lucky
it's part
one.
of it. I'm the lucky one. Yeah, I definitely, I definitely won the lottery with my current wife, and I lucked out.
Well, you look at it and whatever you believe in, or it's just
Yeah,
that this is what was
deity,
supposed to
faith, whatever
happen,
it
and
is. Yeah,
that relationship had to end so another one could form.
absolutely.
And
And I wouldn't trade a second of the pain and misery and expense and time wasted for what I got now.
I'm very happy for you guys. So we get back. Your home. You're starting to do the police thing. You're now you're a single guy.
Yep.
And did you go back to the army and start doing the reserves again after that?
I ended up going back to my unit in Syracuse because it was only an hour drive from my home of record. So I was able to roll right back into that unit, see the same guys I had left the year before. And now I just had a patch in my right shoulder and was able to chill out and smoke cigarettes with the cool guys, so to speak. And and then from there, it's just okay. I had a couple more years left in my contract, and just made sure I did 2 or 3 years longer on my contract than I required for my contract. So when I said, "Hey, I'm ready to be done with this," I could just walk away and not have to pay anything back, or be forced to come back out of retirement for whatever reason. I wanted to make sure I exceeded my required time, so that way there was no questions asked.
Gotcha.
But it was definitely different coming back. So the mission had changed in my reserve unit. As everything does in the military, nothing stays the same except for inefficiency and chaos. But it had changed, and my friends are still there. People I'd come to know and trust, and some new people came, some old people left, and just I did my time. But I tried to keep in touch with my guys, whether it was through Facebook or through random text messages and Christmas cards, whatever it was.
Yeah.
But
So, but yeah, I mean, mine was very similar. I always got back to my unit, and I was only there for, I think maybe like after that first month, and they told us that our unit was moving to a whole another city, and we were being merged with another unit, and they were changing our name and our designation, and our mission was going to be similar but different, and that was all part of the Army restructuring and trying to losing the word, but trying to reduce the size of the force and stuff
yeah.
since the quote war was over, and they didn't have the same funding and everything that they had previously.
Mhm.
So yeah, I was right there with you with that. I think a lot of us probably went through that afterward with that kind of thing. Um,
Yeah,
so you did your time in the army. You were done with that. You had reached the level of captain. You got promoted like right at the end of our tour, right?
right at the end, right before all my IMAs got to leave, I had gotten. I didn't have any fancy letter or formal, like, Lieutenant Girdle, come into my office. I'm going to give you these new, a couple of bars that look better on you, like anything you see, like in Band of Brothers or something.
Yeah.
One of those type of shows. I logged onto my computer, and it said captain instead of lieutenant. And I'm like, oh, shit. And I walked out of my major's office, and I'm like, hey, sir, I just got promoted on AKO. Like, I don't have any orders yet. He goes, well, perfect. Like, now, you're a captain now. And I'm like, can I still be lieutenant? Like, no, you're a captain now. You got to put in your rank and everything. I'm like, all right, cool. So I was lucky enough to be able to have the vast majority of my guys, like you and Keifer and all those dudes, come up to the unit I was assigned to in Kuwait, and we had a little pizza party and promotion ceremony, and it was like, that's what it was. That's what it's about. It's like, growing up and getting bigger and getting older, and yeah. So I made captain and did the first half of officer school for captain, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not doing any more of this stuff. I'm I'm a short timer. I'm getting out and then finish my time.
Yeah. So would you, looking back at now that we've reached the end of your military career, you reached the rank of captain, you did some, I think, some cool stuff, and were able to be a part of some important stuff, very
Yeah,
important stuff, in my opinion.
I mean, it was the
Um,
biggest exodus of Iraq since the Bible.
yeah, yeah, the Army never brought back that much
Legitimate.
stuff before from any other previous war in our history.
Yeah,
Spent tons of money, they had to correct a lot of things and put out a lot of fires, and we were a part of, and that's another thing that a big reason, like what made me want to do this was not just for us, obviously, for our team, but for anyone else. If anybody sees this, and hopefully I get a lot more interviews in the future, but anybody who out there sees, if they're a part of something in the military, people don't hear about. Like, people don't realize how big or how important that was. Our team alone, we moved, what was it, billions of dollars worth of equipment and hundreds of millions in cost to move that equipment. And
yeah. What was the average truck convoy was more than 100 trucks long, and it was how many convoys did we send out a week going back and forth, and each truck can only take two containers, and that's just counting equipment. That's not even counting like, vehicles or water
yeah,
buffalo or
or
anything of that.
multi-million dollar radar vehicle
Oh yeah.
or stuff
So
like that.
untold billions of dollars of equipment moved by uh, a six soldier team with four coasties attached to it. So it was like, oh, okay, so the entire movement of this out of the country is for this little team, this little cell operated in an office that leaked with stolen laptops and printers, moved all this stuff out of country and
Yeah.
shipped it from door to door. So going from their door in Iraq to their front door of their unit, whether it was in Bend, Oregon, or like Texas or whatever, pick your favorite state. It got back to where it was from.
All to no thanks or adoration outside the couple people in the army and your higher leadership who knew who you were and knew what you did.
Yeah,
You came back and got a handshake, maybe a coin,
mess up
here or there.
about it.
Not that I am seeking
Yeah,
adoration for myself or anything, but I would like people out there who maybe have done stuff similar to us just to know that I appreciate the things that they do. I appreciate the things that you did over there, and I think they're a big deal, and I think that people need to know that. And you move on from doing this, and now you have to get back to regular life. You get out of the army, you're now a police officer, or you're a state trooper, right?
I
Or
am. Yeah,
okay,
for New York.
you're in New York. I'm in Florida, so I didn't know what your particular designation is. Different states and stuff like that. So you're still out there doing, I think, very important, needed job, especially right now and in today's day and age. It's depending on where you live, I guess it's pretty rough to be a part of the law enforcement sector.
Yeah, it
How's
is. It's interesting every day.
Yeah. Looking back
Yeah,
at your military time overall, how would you say that you feel about your entire experience?
I had a blast. The only thing I wish I had done younger was been more mature. When, like you do need level of immaturity, but you also need to be to know when it's time for play and when it's time for games. I didn't really realize it was time for. I played games when I should have realized it was time to work longer than I should have. And I mean, when I got into country, it was like, okay, hit the ground running. This is real life. When I should have realized that, hey, the time for doing kid stuff is over as soon as you graduate college. And that would be the only thing I would have changed. But I mean, that's me. That's one person. Other people may have begged to differ and said, hey, you should have been, nose to the grindstone since high school. But it is what it is. You need a level of playfulness in order to be able to be resilient.
I tried pretty well to keep myself separated in that. Like my last job, I mean, not that I didn't joke around with the guys, but if they saw me outside of work, they probably would have been like, "This is not the dude we work with,"
Yeah.
you know. I think one of the big things that I had to learn, you talked about younger and stuff. I got real lucky that I had some of you guys around, especially once I reached sergeant, because I often ended up becoming the bad guy for trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
So like there was once when we had some guys on CQ duty and they had been there for like 12 hours, and that's only supposed to be like 4 hour shifts. Like we're at home, we're not out at war where your relief didn't show up. That someone did not keep up with the schedule. So I went and found out who it was who was supposed to be in charge of these guys because they hadn't eaten. They'd been sitting there all day, that no one had checked in on them, nothing. And I was like, well, okay, I'm going to go correct this. And I found out that it was an E8 who they had already seen and was upstairs and showered and laying in his bunk. And I'm an E5, and I'm like, well, okay, I'm going to go handle this. I'm literally on my way upstairs to drag this dude out of his bunk. I was full ready to get physical with this guy. And my first sergeant comes across my path as I'm heading up there. He's like, what's up, Reddick? I'm like, well, I'm about to go get kicked out of the army, Sergeant. That's what's up. And and he stopped me and he corrected it. And had I not seen him in that moment, I may have gotten a lot more trouble that day. So there's definitely you live and we learn and we grow a little and
Absolutely.
stuff changes. Well, I want to know a little bit more about the aftermath of the military. You're
Mhm.
in the like say the state troopers now. Um, how that this did you were you trying to become a state trooper beforehand when you said that you had
So in 2008, I had taken the test for New York State, state police, and there had been like 40,000 people that had taken the test. And 6 months later, New York and Mount, they were bankrupt and halting all state hires. So I was like, oh, well, there's plan number one kind of, it's on hold for now. So I always want to be a state trooper. And then I just like, oh, okay, I'll do the military thing for a few years. And then when I realized I didn't want to do the military thing anymore, I'm like, well, I'll go to nursing. That's third thing. It's blast. You get to help people out every day. It's a fun job. And it was, it just, things had changed and I had been given the opportunity.
do you like being a state trooper now?
I do. It's fun. I mean, you get to drive around, listen to the radio, drink coffee, and help people out. Where's there a downside of that? I mean, yeah, there's bad parts about the job, but I mean, the good outweigh the bad, absolutely.
Well, that's good at least, because I
Yeah.
know that's not everybody's experience. I mean, especially in recent years between during COVID time, and we've had a lot of national incidents and things like that that I know that have significantly changed the way we not the way we do policing, but maybe the perspective and how a lot of people see policing. And there's always
Yeah.
this battle back and forth of whether to support or not to support and all that kind of thing. So it's I'm glad that you're still enjoying and liking doing that. And because I mean it obviously is necessary, and I'm glad that you are trying to help people out.
It is absolutely necessary, and no cop wakes up every day, wakes up in the morning thinking something bad's going to happen or wanting to do something bad to someone. It's just, you never know what the roll of the dice is going to be. I mean, it's, you wake up and you might think you're going to have a great day and you show up and it's an absolute nightmare, like worst case scenario for whatever happens.
Yeah.
And you just you gotta roll with it. You gotta deal with it.
And I find it particularly interesting that you have gone from the trying to be police to military to nursing to back to police. It really shows that there is a certain type of person that often gets involved in those kind of things. And I have a certain level of baseline respect for anyone who does any, kind of first responder job, anything like that. Because it is
Absolutely.
difficult. I mean, whether you're talking, nursing, healthcare, or police, military, firefighting, all that kind of stuff, you have to be, whether you're the desk guy or you're the field guy, like there is still a certain level of, some people refer to as like the hero gene. I don't know if I like that necessarily, but like there is something about certain people and it shows and how you've gone from one to the next, all within that same kind of
Yeah.
realm. So I appreciate everything you're doing out there.
As do I, man.
And I appreciate you sitting down and doing this with me. And I just hope that other people can find some interest and appreciate your story out there. Thank you for letting or thank you for telling it to us.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity too. I mean, I didn't do anything overseas. Like my guys did everything. I just sat there and I'm like, okay, I'm going to get yelled at. Or, if any sort of praise came down, I'm not taking that. I'm like, I did absolutely nothing. Like these guys are the ones that did it. These guys deserve everything. I did nothing. And that's the way I see it. And that's the way I'm always going to see it.
Always humble.